So welcome everyone to the Week 6 podcast as we continue our explorations of narrative literature in pre-modern India. Now this week we'll be both turning to something new and returning to something we've already talked about. We'll be looking at a very important play by a rather incredible Sanskrit poet by the name of Bhavabhūti, and it's based on the ending of Vālmīki's Rāmāyaṇa, which we all found to be kind of unsatisfying, right? When Rama banishes Sita, even though she's done nothing wrong, and she's actually pregnant with their twin sons, Lava and Kusha. Bhavabhūti is a complex and fascinating poet, and his play, which is called the uttara-rāma-carita, or Rama's Last Act, as Sheldon Pollock translates it, it's an extremely important masterpiece of world literature. So we're going to be spending the next 2 weeks to kind of go through carefully the 7 different acts of this beautiful Sanskrit play. This week we'll be reading the first 4 acts of the play, and next week we'll look at acts 5 through 7. In all of these acts and the entire play, Bhavabhūti very consistently explores how rasa is generated through a subtle but valuable engagement between art, the spectator, and all of those sensitive feelings that we keep buried within our hearts, but those feelings that make us truly human. Now, we'll be talking a lot more about this kind of rasa experience in class, and also maybe a bit more in next week's podcast. Today, what I'd like to concentrate on is an aspect of Bhavabhūti's play that also gets picked up quite a bit, and that's the phenomenon of adaptation. There's very good evidence that Bhavabhūti literally took the ending of Vālmīki's epic Rāmāyaṇa, which we read, if you remember, in the last month, and decided to change it. He wanted to make it both conform to the demands of Sanskrit theater as a genre, and also because maybe for him, like many of us, Rama comes off looking a bit like a jerk. Right? And he wanted to imagine a different kind of Rama, maybe also a different kind of Sita. And so Bhavabhūti changes the story so that rather than ending in tragedy, with Sita kind of going off and into Mother Earth, and Rama spending his days broken, basically, the couple is able to reunite and live happily ever after. In order to do this, interestingly enough, he uses theater itself as a device within his play. Rama and Sita are reunited through a play that Vālmīki stages within the play. So in this podcast, let's start with exploring the basics of Sanskrit theater as a genre, so we can kind of understand what Bhavabhūti was doing by using a play to reunite Rama with Sita. And then what I'd like to do is to go quickly over the version of the story as Vālmīki told it in the Rāmāyaṇa, and then walk again quickly through the 7 acts of Bhavabhūti's play to see how he adapts the story. And in between, we'll take a quick historical look at who Bhavabhūti was. Should be interesting, so let's get started. Now, if you remember last time I'd mentioned that until about the year 850, people thought of Sanskrit poetry, or kavya, and Sanskrit theater, or natya, as being 2 different domains of art. Poets and playwrights took to 2 different domains of creating literature. But eventually, the idea is that they merged into a single domain of literary expression so that poets were basically expected to write plays. Maybe an equivalent today is how we think of video games and movies as being 2 totally different domains of pop media. But maybe we can see that they're starting to merge together as movies get more and more computer-generated and video games get more and more cinematic. Anyway, the history of Sanskrit poetry and theater is kind of like this. Sanskrit theater goes back to maybe around the 1st or 2nd century CE, although I'm sure that acting and theater had been around like a long time before that. The only thing is that around the year 200 CE, there's a fellow by the name of Bharata who compiled a set of theoretical rules and principles about dramaturgy, about theater, that were known as the Natya Shastra, the theory of theater. The Natya Shastra is a massive 6,000 verse compendium that takes a look at all kinds of practical aspects of theater and performance, everything from all the different ways in which actors can act the script and add emotional content to it, rasa, to also things like costuming, stagecraft, music, dance, and like a whole bunch of other details about how to perform plays. It's really an incredible, comprehensive, and fascinating snapshot about how people might have entertained themselves 2,000 years ago in India. It's a great field of study. The Natya Shastra is a fountainhead for then a long series of texts on dramaturgy. One of them, called the Dasharupaka, defined 10 different kinds of Sanskrit theatrical pieces that playwrights could write and stage. This included the two major ones of Sanskrit theater, which are called Nataka and Prakarana. Natakas are historical plays, which are based on well-known mythological or historical stories that everyone would know. Prakaranas are fictive plays based on stories that are made up by the playwright and presented kind of for the first time. Beyond that, the Dasharupaka defines 8 other types of plays. These include things like Nritya, which is dance drama, which Bharatanatyam these days is a reminiscence of that. Prahasana, which is a satire or farce. Bahana, which is a comic monologue, and so on and so forth. Bhavabhūti's play is, as you might guess, a nataka. It's based on a historical or mythological narrative. We're going to be looking at a bhana in a couple of weeks, so we'll get a taste of different types of theater. Now, what are some of the basic characteristics of a play in Sanskrit? For one, there are basically 4 or 5 main stereotypical characters in the Sanskrit play. First, there's the stage director or sutradhara, who comes and introduces the play. He sets the stage. He's in our world, basically. Then there's the main protagonist in the story world, who's usually a king or a prince. Then there's the protagonist's buddy, who's called the vidushaka, which is means a clown, but it's a Brahmin courtier who's usually poorly educated, can't speak Sanskrit, but he really likes to eat and just sort of chill out. He basically plays the part of a fool. He's a butt of jokes. Bhavabhūti, as we see, actually won't have a vidushaka in this play. Then there's a primary love interest who's often a princess or other elite character, and she usually has a girlfriend who she confides in, and therein lies the kind of different triangles. Many Sanskrit plays then are kind of fluffy in some ways. They're melodramatic affairs, basically kind of like modern rom-coms that you might see in Hollywood or Bollywood or wherever. As we see, Bhavabhūti is going to take this genre and do something like totally different that maybe no other playwright had really done before. Make it deep and serious. Language is another key element of Sanskrit theater. The elite male characters, like the king or the Brahmins or ministers and so on, they all speak Sanskrit, while women and low-caste characters are speaking in regional vernacular languages, which were called Prakrits. But the thing is, everyone understands each other on stage, and the audience obviously is supposed to know both Sanskrit and Prakrit, so it's kind of an ambiguous thing. There's some exceptions to the rule. Some women, like goddesses or nuns, do speak Sanskrit, and the Vidushaka, who's uneducated but a Brahmin, speaks Prakrit instead of Sanskrit. So there's some crossing of these language lines. The main reason why people went to see plays in ancient India was not to learn the story, but to get a rasa experience, meaning that people wanted a pure, unexpurgated experience of an aesthetized emotion like love or wonder or glory or maybe even misery. At first, this was seen as a kind of two-sided product involving the text that was written by the playwright, as well as the acting and staging that was performed by the troupe of actors. As we're going to see in Bhavabhūti's play, he's on the cusp of a certain kind of revolution in which a third player is introduced. Rasa is beginning to be seen as something that intrinsically involves the spectator and his own process of self-realization. You can't have rasa without a spectator, is the idea. The play is important as a literary space in this vision, but what's more important is that the spectator is a sensitive reader of the work and is able to explore the depths of his or her own capacity for appreciating their own humanity, right? Because as Bhavabhūti at least seems to point to, rasa comes from being able to understand one's own emotional identity. Now, as far as rasa goes, there's a certain mechanics and expectation that's involved in rasa. Each play is supposed to have a dominant rasa, which is usually like 90% of the time it's Shrungara, love, right? Each play has kind of has to end in a moment of miracle or wonder, ashcharya. Basically, at the end of every show, you need to have some fireworks, some kind of miracle has to happen. Meanwhile, a good playwright is able to develop all the other rasas that are in the 9 rasas throughout the course of the play. Now, as we're going to see, Bhavabhūti does this, except rather than Shrungara as his main dominant rasa, he takes karuṇa, or misery, this tragic suffering, as the focus of his attention. Okay, so now with this background info about Sanskrit theater, let's turn to how Bhavabhūti adapts Vālmīki's Rāmāyaṇa to the stage. We'll start with an overview of how Vālmīki's 7th book, the Uttara-Kanda, goes. Now, the Uttara-Kanda starts with life going on kind of nicely for Rama and Sita once they're back in Ayodhya. They're enjoying the courtly world. Sita gets pregnant, but then Rama's court officials come and report about some particularly nasty rumors that are flying around in Ayodhya about Sita, that she was unfaithful to Rama when she was in Lanka. The ministers say, hey, Rama, you got to do something about this. So he decides that the only way to kind of seem strong in the public eye is to get rid of Sita. Otherwise, he'll seem weak and his authority will be kind of in jeopardy. And so he orders Lakshmana to take Sita out to the forest near Vālmīki's hermitage and get rid of her. This is exactly what Lakshmana does. He takes Sita, even though she's pregnant, to the forest, leaves her alone to die. Vālmīki then finds her and asks her to stay in his hermitage as his guest. The twins are born, who are named Lava and Kusha. Vālmīki then helps to educate the twins and kind of takes care of this whole family. He then invents poetry, right, and seeing the hunter shoot the bird. Then he teaches the twins how to recite the whole Rāmāyaṇa, and they become sort of young bards. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, some weird stuff starts to happen. There's this king named Ravana who gets possessed by a demon and starts to threaten Brahmin sages. Rama then sends out brother number 4, Shatrughna, who really hasn't been in the whole picture of the Ramayana. This is his time to shine. And he goes and deals with the demon. There's this big fight. Shatrughna kills Ravana in the city of Mathura. And on the way back to Ayodhya, Shatrughna happens to stay at Vālmīki's ashram. He meets Sita and the twins there. Lakshmana, meanwhile, then suggests to Rama that he should conduct a horse sacrifice and consolidate his kingdom so that these kind of chaotic events like the Lavana thing doesn't happen. He also needs to be absolved of Brahmin murder, which is a capital level crime. Technically, when he killed Ravana's a demon, but he was also the son of a Brahmin sage named Pulastya. So in order to be absolved of this Brahmin murder, Rama starts this year-long horse sacrifice where a horse has to be let loose to roam around for a year. The armies defend it from any attackers, and at the end they sacrifice the horse. Now the rituals commence. That's when Vālmīki comes to Ayodhya with his students, including the twins. He asks the twins to perform the Rāmāyaṇa at the sacrificial arena where Rama is there. Lava and Kusha then start singing 20 chapters every day. And once they're finished, Rama realizes the error of his ways by banishing Sita. So he sends a notice to Vālmīki asking that Sita be brought back to Ayodhya. And he proposes that, look, why don't we have another fire ordeal to prove her chastity, this time to the public citizens of Ayodhya, not just to a bunch of monkeys. Right? Sita comes back, but she now refuses to do the fire ordeal. She gives her oral testimony that she's never wavered in her faithfulness to to Rama, never even considered being with Ravana or anyone else. Then she calls out to her mother in the earth to come take her back. The ground splits, and a golden throne comes out of the earth with the goddess Madhavi, the earth, seated there. She takes Sita in her arms, and the throne descends into the underworld. Rama gets upset. He wants to attack the underworld to get back Sita, but they make him calm down, and then he just rules Ayodhya peacefully for the rest of his days, until eventually he hands over the kingship to Lava and Kusha. He divides the kingdom between them. He enters into the Sarayu River, casts off his mortal body, and resumes his eternal heavenly existence as Vishnu. So that's how Vālmīki tells the story. Bhavabhūti is going to change it. Now, first a bit about Bhavabhūti himself. This was a master playwright who lived in the early to mid 700s and grew up in the rural Vidarbha region of India. Basically, it's eastern Maharashtra, southern Madhya Pradesh in India today. Bhavabhūti is a Brahmin, but he left his home to find work at the royal court of King Yashovarman of Kannauj. Now, Kannauj was a preeminent cultural, political, and economic urban center of ancient India. It's kind of a forgotten ancient city. For more than 700 years, from the year 500 till about 1200, it was this major trading center. It was at the crossroads of two different trading routes. It was a massive city with a huge standing army, fortified walls. It was a cosmopolitan center where people migrated from all over India and even beyond to find work. There were people from Kashmir, Sri Lanka, Gujarat, Bengal. Greeks were there, Romans, right? Arabs were there. All had migrated to Kannauj and worked there as merchants, clerks, ministers, intellectuals. Chinese pilgrims would visit there. It was just a seat of great political and cultural power. It was a key site of control for major kingdoms in India, the Gurjara Pratiharas, the Palas of Bengal, and the Rashtrakutas of the Deccan. Yashovarman was a Gurjara Pratihara, kind of the ancestors of the Rajputs, basically. It was in his court that Bhavabhūti lived and wrote these three plays that survive today. The Mahavira-carita, this is the basic story of the Rāmāyaṇa. The Malati Madhava, which is kind of a horror romance that takes place in the cremation grounds and involves a lot of odd Buddhist and Shaiva tantric characters. And then there's the uttara-rāma-carita, the ending of the Rāmāyaṇa. Now, there's two key features that I want to point out about Bhavabhūti's poetry. First is his masterful use of dense and complicated verbal forms and compounds, like basic verbal pyrotechnics, you could say. It's harder for us to appreciate in reading an English translation of Bhavabhūti, but sometimes it comes through in Pollock's very good translation, I think. The key feature, though, that you can see, and everyone agrees on about Bhavabhūti, is that he deeply was interested in the idea of rasa and exploring especially the sentiment of karuṇa, or misery, grief, and the connections that rasa experience has to all kinds of different artistic and cultural forms, but also to memories that lie buried within all of us, deep within. And ultimately, his idea is that the experience of art and culture has to be an intrinsic part of how we can come to understand and appreciate who we really are. Theater, poetry, art, culture, all of these in Bhavabhūti's vision were the only ways to come to terms with our inner emotional identity. So let's see how he does this in the uttara-rāma-carita, this real masterpiece of Sanskrit and, in fact, of world literature. It's a 7-act play, and so to close out the podcast, let's kind of go through a quick rundown of the 7 acts so that when we do read them and discuss them, we will get a better sense of where it's all going to go. Act 1 begins with Rama and Sita passing the time in the royal gardens with Lakshmana. Sita is super pregnant at this point, and to help ease her pain, Lakshmana says, hey, let's look at some pictures that have been painted depicting the various scenes of the Rāmāyaṇa. They go through all the scenes of the epic one by one, and each evokes different kinds of emotional experiences. There's moments of love, anger, fear, misery, wonder, disgust, everything, right? Basically, we as spectators get to watch Rama and Sita as characters having rasa experiences. And as we do this, we also have rasa experiences, kind of by transference in some ways. Sita gets exhausted from all of these emotional ups and downs and falls kind of asleep. A spy then comes in and tells Rama he's been hearing that there's all these awful rumors about Sita's unfaithfulness and so on, and people are making fun of Rama for taking her back. Rama decides, okay, we'll have to get rid of Sita, and so orders Lakshmana, hey, go and prepare a chariot to take her into the forest. Lakshmana leaves. Another court official comes in and reports, hey, there's some trouble brewing. There's this king, Lavana, who's possessed by a demon and is terrorizing the country. Rama leaves then to meet with Shatrughna to kind of deal with this political threat. That's when Sita then wakes up. She finds she's all alone and wonders what's going on. Act 2 begins with an interlude in which two characters come and recap all the plot events that have gone on between the two acts. This is a common device that Bhavabhūti uses to kind of move the plot along. Vasanti, a forest spirit, talks to an ascetic nun named Atreyi and describes how Rama kicked Sita out of the kingdom, how Lava and Kusha were born and now are being raised in Vālmīki's hermitage, how Vālmīki created the Rāmāyaṇa after seeing the hunter shoot the bird, then Rama is conducting a horse sacrifice, using a golden image of Sita as kind of a stand-in for his wife. And now how there's this low-caste Shudra named Shambhuka who's happening to do ascetic practices which are against the law for Shudras to do. And so Rama's coming here to this very forest named Janasthana to punish that Shudra named Shambhuka. So then we see Rama entering the stage, where he's in the Janasthana forest now, and he kills Shambhuka, who then appears as a heavenly being, a siddha, and goes off to learn higher knowledge, spiritual knowledge. Rama then walks around and reminisces about the good times he had in this forest with Sita, and then Shambhuka comes back and invites Rama to come with him to go visit the nearby hermitage of Agastya. Act 3 starts with another interlude that involves two goddesses who are chatting about what happened to Sita in the forest. Sita found herself all alone at the Ganga river and decided to kill herself by throwing herself into the water. Then the river goddess herself appears along with Prithvi, the earth. They rescue her, they help her nurture the twins, wean the twins. The Ganga then gives Sita the power of invisibility so that she can stay safe and away from harm and unnoticed in this same Janasthana forest region. Then they take the twins to Vālmīki so that Vālmīki can take care of the twins. Now Rama enters the stage. He still kind of has all these memories that are being triggered by all of the little sights and sounds he sees in the forest. Eventually he faints because of this overwhelming grief that he's feeling. Sita is there. She's still invisible, and she comes to him and touches Rama, and by his touch she's revived. He's revived, right? The forest goddess Vasanti then comes in and greets Rama. She criticizes him pretty badly for abandoning Sita. Rama then tells her, about his overwhelming grief and guilt for doing it and his enduring love for his wife. He keeps fainting over and over again. Sita keeps touching him invisibly over and over again and reviving him. Finally, Rama kind of hurries off to Ayodhya because he has to do the horse sacrifice. Now, Act 4 starts with an interlude where there are two students of Vālmīki who are talking about these visitors who've come to the hermitage. Janaka, who's Sita's dad, Kaushalya, who's Rama's mom, Sumitra, who's Lakshmana's mom, and the royal priest and guru, Vasishtha, is also with them. Janaka then enters. He has this long lament about what might be going on with his daughter Sita. Kausalya is there. She keeps fainting in fear and grief. Lava comes out, the boy, and greets the elders. They all feel like he looks a lot like Sita, but he doesn't know who his mother is. and it's kind of a puzzle still, right? There's a report that Lakshmana's son named Chandraketu is now coming nearby the hermitage, because the armies of Ayodhya are following Rama's sacrificial horse, and they have to protect it for that whole year. Lava says he knows all about this Lakshmana and Rama, and starts telling him stories from the Ramayana. Janaka says, hey, can you tell me what happened to Sita at the end? Lava says he doesn't really know yet. He's only been told the story up to Sita's abandonment. Vālmīki has composed the rest, but it's a secret still. He hasn't told him. The act ends as Lava and the other boys of the hermitage decide to go and kind of play around with this horse that's coming near the hermitage. They're going to stand up to the challenge that Chandraketu and the horse are representing to the sovereignty of the hermitage. Act 5 involves a fascinating meeting between Lava and Chandraketu. These are the sons of Rama and Lakshmana, now meeting for the first time. They don't know who each other's parentage is. First, Lava attacks and routs the soldiers, protecting the horse. Chandraketu comes in and feels a strange bond of love with Sita. He doesn't know why he has so much affection for this kid. Right? Lava also feels the same, but still after Lava criticizes Rama's flaws in Rama's character, including arguing that he killed Vali unfairly, Chandraketu gets angry and challenges Lava to a duel. Then there's at the start of Act 6, we see an interlude. We find out that the duel was kind of a stalemate. Eventually it's stopped by Rama, who comes back and pauses the battle. Chandraketu enters and introduces Rama to Lava. But again, Rama feels a strange affection to the boy, doesn't really know why. Then Kusha enters, hearing about all this fighting, and tries to come and help Lava. Both Lava and Kusha remind Rama of Sita. They look like Sita. And again, he starts to kind of remorse and suffer and grieve and miss his wife. At this point, Kusha recites verses from the Ramayana, explaining to Lava, hey, why is Rama in such grief? He gives him moments where Rama was suffering. This only makes Rama actually suffer even more. And he responds to each of these verses from the Ramayana with an even more intensive, rasa-filled verse that Bhavabhūti has created. It's this fascinating kind of back and forth between verses from the Vālmīki Ramayana and Bhavabhūti's new poetry, and we'll look at this very closely, actually. The act ends with Rama meeting the elders, including especially Janaka, and it's kind of awkward, you might say, the meeting between Janaka and Rama, who's kicked out his daughter. Right? The last act is the big doozy. We find out at the start that everyone's gathered together to see this new play that Vālmīki himself has composed that will tell the ending of the Ramayana, what happened to Sita. Right? Rama and Lakshmana are the guests of honor. Chandraketu and the twins are also there watching the play. And this is now a play within the play. Right? There's a stage director who comes out and announces the play is going to be filled with karuṇa and ascharya, grief and wonder. Sita then enters with two goddesses, right? The Ganga and the earth. Each of them is carrying one of her babies. Sita wants to commit suicide at this point by entering the earth. The earth tells her wait until the kids are grown, and she sends the boys to live with Vālmīki. Now, seeing all of this happen before his eyes, Rama again falls unconscious with grief. Then Vālmīki brings the real Sita out from off stage, and the goddesses as well, the earth and the Ganga. And again, like before, Sita's touch revives her husband. Right? The two boys are also then brought down from the gallery. Vālmīki comes out and explains to Rama who all of these people are. They all embrace, and the play ends happily. So there you have it, the really kind of fascinating way that Bhavabhūti adapts and twists the tragic and confounding ending of Vālmīki's Ramayana to be acceptable on the Sanskrit stage. There's a lot of to unpack and talk about for sure. And so we're going to spend the next 2 weeks on this kind of masterpiece of ancient theater. For now, let's open up our books, get to reading the first few acts, and let's see where we end up as we explore the last act of the Rama. So see you next time.